And we are live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 77 of Global Citizens. My name is Calvin. I am the show's host, and of course, I'm also its creator. So, my guest for today actually hailed from my second home, Singapore, a country that is so deeply ingrained in my heart and a country that I really miss. But of course, well, we can't travel nowadays since for obvious reason. Now, this amazing lady actually traveled during the pandemic. She was reported. Sorry, it's not that she was reported. There was actually some articles that was published about her in Motherships and Asia One, which is a notable social media sites in Singapore. So my guest for today is Miss Isabel Leong. So Isabel is a digital nomad and a full-time travel blogger from Singapore, who, in her own words, she claims that her head is always in the clouds. So after catching a travel bug in 2015 when she was on a university exchange program, she decided to pursue this later on due to her interest in travel. She has now traveled to 55 countries, yes? Or more? Or did I
Yeah,
miss?
no, it's around 40, I think.
Ah, 40. Okay. Still quite a lot. Still
Yeah.
quite a lot. Yeah. Yeah. She's just being humble, guys. 55 will be reached soon.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So in the 40 countries, and she is now staying in Mexico. So without further ado, I will pass the platform back to her. So Isabel, if you don't mind, maybe introduce a little bit more about yourself.
Yeah, hi. Hi. So, yeah, I'm from Singapore. I started traveling during my student exchange in 2015, started my own travel blog then. And then since then, I've just been working full time while doing my travel blogging thing on the side until eventually I went on a working holiday in New Zealand in 2018 and just realize how different life is when you're actually living in another country. And then when it was time for me to come back to Singapore and find another proper full time job, I was like, maybe I should try giving this whole travel blogging thing a chance. And so since then, I've just been blogging full time and working online, doing a few other things as well, like digital marketing for other clients. And now here I am in Mexico. I've been on the road since October of last year. So that's about 3, 4 months now, I think. Yeah.
All right. Okay, so for those of you who just tuned in to this show for the very first time, Global Citizen is an online platform whereby I advocated third culture kids. I usually invite them. So third culture kids are basically people who has experienced the lifestyle that I did, whereby we grow up and spend our formative years outside of our passport country or countries. And along with that, I also represent global citizens such as Isabel here to tell the stories of what it is like to live outside of the life that you are used to, where the place that you grow up, and the main purpose is actually to highlight on intercultural studies. And along with that, I also want people to actually understand that living outside of your passport country is not always an extended vacation, but there are also some ups and downs and some challenges to it that, well, people may not notice it, but of course, everybody have their own sets of challenges. Yeah. All right. So, Isabel, this is going to be my very first question.
Yeah.
What does travel mean to you? Because at that time, where, as you mentioned, you got the travel bug. At that time, I read in one of your article
Mhm.
is because you just want to do something new before you graduated. Yeah. So what does it mean to you though? Because after you have been doing it for quite a while, right?
Yeah, so in the beginning, it was really about checking off destinations, and I had this. I felt like I had this deadline to do whatever I want before I jump into full time working. That was when I was in university, and so when I was in France doing my school exchange, I just wanted to visit as many countries as I could. But I mean, slowly, now that I'm able to travel whenever I want, it travel to me is more about the awareness of the world. Like in different places, everything is treated differently, attitudes are different. And then in the process, it's a lot about self discovery. So I've learned a lot more about myself, and I've evolved so much from just being on my own and being independent and interacting with different people. And then also because I most of the time I do different things different days. So it's really about not taking anything for granted because no one day is the same, and trying to live my best life as if it was the last.
That's a beautiful, beautiful statement. That's really beautiful. I love
Yeah.
that. So, okay. So, with the profile that I usually invite, a lot of times third culture kids have identity issue. It's because they grow up in different parts of the country, or even like for myself, I grew up in Singapore most of my life, from as a kid to now my 20s. I recently celebrated my 28th birthday, so please don't leave a comment about what is my age. So people do. So yes, I'm blocking you people from burning me. Sakit. Okay, just kidding. Okay, so for yourself though, how would you interpret home? So aside from your loved ones, do you feel where do you feel most comfortable location wise? And just as actually a tribute to one of my past guests, because she actually is an international speaker. Her name is Zaitun Majid or Zai Mystic. So Zai actually spent a considerable amount of time outside of Singapore, of course, because of her career, because of the demand, because she's a speaker. So she told me that last time when she was on this show that she felt there's a sense of detachment from Singapore after years of being abroad most of the time. So do you feel that kind of experience too, or do you still feel that there is still a strong attachment to Singapore?
Great question, because it's something that I like people ask me all the time, and I guess it differs for everybody, but for me, I mean, saying that I enjoy being on the road so much, I definitely do not feel that strong an attachment to Singapore as a whole. And for me, mostly the home is more of a feeling and not exactly a place. So this whole interpreting of a home thing has been one of my biggest life question for the better half of last year, trying to figure out like where I want to be and what home is to me. And so like some days I wish I was in one place, but other days I don't feel like living another place. And so after some deep reflection at the end of last year, I've just realized that home can be anywhere. And to me, it is where I feel most comfortable being unapologetically me. And so it's really about the people that make you feel at home. So yeah, I mean, I definitely home eventually would be Singapore because my whole family lives there and I've lived there most of my life. But I feel like I'm pretty adaptable and I can just feel at home anywhere else as long as like I have the modern comforts and I enjoy the surroundings. I can really just be anywhere.
Okay. I'm glad on what you mentioned earlier to be unapologetically being yourself.
Hmm.
Yeah. So
Hmm.
you have been exposed to at least cultures from 40 different countries,
Hmm.
and everyone, of course, is a different pages. It's a different
Yeah, for
story to
sure.
tell.
Yeah.
So there's one quote that is actually in my Facebook page. I recall it's by Madam Anne Campanella. So travel actually opens each new chapters of your book, though. So from this travel, I think you also mentioned this in the opening. You discover a lot more new stuff about yourself. So can you tell us what have you learned about yourself a lot more though with all your travels?
Yeah. So, for instance, like I used to be really. shy, like a really big introvert, and just shy in general when it comes to talking to strangers. But because I travel independently, I'm I have to be more open and more of an extrovert in talking to strangers and finding out information. So I've definitely been more comfortable with talking to strangers, and then also I have learned that I'm pretty adaptable. Like I could be living in a hostel one day and then maybe another luxury hotel the next day due to my travel blogging work. And yeah, it's a lot about I've also learned that I've become more open-minded in the way everything that's happening around us. Like I used to think, so way before all these travels happened, I used to think that, oh, okay, everyone's life is meant to be you get good grades, get into a good school, good grades, and then you graduate and then get in a stable job, have a family, and just settle down. But after I did my exchange in France and around Central Europe, I've just realized that, oh, you can be a musician or an artist and still be happy living your life and still build a career out of what you love. So yeah, so because of that, it has opened my eyes to all the infinite possibilities in what you want to achieve and what you want to do.
Okay, okay. I love that. I love
Yeah.
that. Yeah. I mean, I love Singapore with wholeheartedly, but even then, there are times that I feel constrained to it. Well, I'm not a Singaporean born son. People like to call me, I call myself the second son of Singapore. I'm
Yeah.
a Singaporean PR, and
Yeah.
one of my best friend actually called me the adopted son, since, yeah, pretty sad. Yeah.
Mm.
But even as somebody who may not be born in Singapore but has lived there, there are a lot of times whereby I feel very constrained.
Yeah.
Uh, I really feel very constrained. That it's like as though if I don't do things a certain way or that I don't follow a certain expectation, I feel
Yeah.
that I'm considered a failure. So yeah, I'm glad you actually highlighted about that. Is because now people actually see that even though in a sense is that the world is so much bigger than what you're where you are born at, and it doesn't mean that you did not succeed there does not mean you can succeed elsewhere.
Yeah, that's true. I think, yeah, just, I mean, we are opening up now, but Singapore is still a pretty conservative country in a sense. And that's why we all tend to follow or feel that way about Singapore when we're in there for too long. Some people feel totally at home and they just used to the whole predictability of life. And that's fine too, just not something that I would envision myself doing.
Yep. No, that's very fair. That's very fair enough. Though I want to ask something though, is that when you decided to jump into this life as a travel blogger, as a digital nomad,
Mhm.
whereby you are on constant move and you make a living through social media, what was the challenge back then? Because as you mentioned, Singapore
Yeah,
is still a very conservative society, and
yeah,
well, unless you have a father or your mom is in the digital marketing industry themselves,
yeah.
there's definitely going to be a sort of heavy resistance to it.
Stigma. Yeah,
So yeah,
yeah, for sure. I mean, in the beginning, so in the beginning, no one, okay, maybe even up to today, no one really recognizes like that you can really work online, and especially with a blog, people just treat it as a hobby type of activity rather than something that you can actually earn money from. And so, yeah, for sure, in the beginning, my parents would be like, okay, when are you coming back to start a full time job? And then even my friends would question the same thing and ask, oh, when do you plan to, when are you going to have enough of this lifestyle and get a full time job at home? And so it wasn't until like they could see that I was actually able to sustain this lifestyle. When I moved to Japan for the first 3 months, I wanted to use that as a trial month and to see if I could make it work. And it wasn't until like a couple of months later when they realized that, okay, I can actually live affordably overseas and I could still earn a decent income from just working online, that they slowly accepted what I do, and they just accepted the fact that I wouldn't be able to stay in Singapore for too long a time. Yeah. And now, I mean, with the whole COVID situation going on, people are slowly starting to see that, oh, you can actually work online from anywhere. And so it's slowly becoming a norm. Mhm.
Yeah. For okay, I've actually where in 2020, which is only actually a month back. In
Mhm.
fact, around 2 months back, which is in the month of November, I actually was hosting. I was actually an MC in an event that hosted a lot of startups under the Visa organization. I actually heard of this comment that there's somebody who would rather die than ever convert their business online. So this is something really shocking, I guess. I
Yeah,
mean, well, we can't ask people to change. I mean, change
yeah,
is inside yourself, right? But the thing
yeah,
is that the possibility now exists, and we definitely will dive in a little bit on that later, though. But I actually just want to ask something. So people, when they see your social media, they will always thought that you live a beautiful luxurious stuff. It's always insta worthy. Of course, it's to be fair enough, of course. Well, this is part of your job, but do you mind telling us the reality behind it? Because it's not always ups, right? There's definitely downs. In
yeah,
fact, I see in your article in Mothership whereby you actually live in nature
yeah.
in a place which has negative 12 degrees. The lowest I've ever been is -6, and I can't stand it. And I'm terrified of cold weather.
Yeah, I know.
So, for yourself, though, do you mind telling us the reality behind it?
Yeah, of
Because,
course.
yeah,
So different, yeah, different situations. Like travel has exposed me to totally very different situations. So, for example, like the -6 degrees one, I was doing a road trip with my friend, and it was nothing luxurious at all because we packed everything into one car. We slept in the car, we ate in the car, we did our work in the car, we drove in the car. So there was one time we just hit a roadblock because that main road, there happened to be a homicide scene. So the police blocked off the whole road and we had to turn around. And so we went into this sort of dirt road in. This whole thing happened in the US. Yeah, so we sort of turned into a like a trail, not a proper concrete road. And so the sky was getting dark because it was in November. Yeah, so it was the sky sets early, and for some reason we had to just impromptu camp there because we couldn't turn back because it would be too long and the road ahead was too treacherous, and so we just had to like make do and camp there. And so it was really cold. I think it was -10 or 13 by the time the sun set. And when I pour, like liquid bottle, when I pour it into a cup, the water
yeah,
just froze instantly. That was kind of crazy because I've never seen anything like that before. So it's a lot about, yeah, trying to adapt, and even the worst situations. So like this was one example, and then most recently I had an unplanned stay in Costa Rica for another week or so, and so I just had to, and I didn't have any form of communication. I kind of left my phone. Oh, it was the whole story in itself. But I didn't have my phone, and I wasn't able to communicate. And I just had an unplanned stay, and so I had to really last minute find accommodation somewhere in a beach town. And so I just lived in a hostel for like 9 days straight, and it's not all glamorous, of course, but you just go with it if you want to live, and if you want to live and travel long term. All these little hassles and the little discomforts, you just get used to it. But because there's so much more than like living in a hostel because like the town itself is pretty and it's beautiful, and I get to surf most of the day and do day trips. And so, like if you save a little penny here and there, you get to travel more long term. And
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
so for the most part, I think 99% of my life is not really documented on Instagram. It's just like really wild and crazy.
Yeah. But would you ever trade it for a normal desk job life or no?
Oh no, I think not. At least not for the few years. Not in a few years, at least. I'm still enjoying this whole exposing myself to different environments kind of life. Like, of course, after roughing it out for a while, I'll definitely miss the whole modern comforts. Just having a home, having proper plumbing system, and then for a while, I will miss that. And once I'm in that in that kind of life, I would miss adventure again. So then I'll be off globetrotting again.
Yeah. Welcome to the Global Citizens community.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Okay, I've only experienced a handful of that when I was serving the national service, but I don't think I've seen water frozen when I was
Yeah,
trying to do that.
yeah.
So I hope to see something. I hope to see something like that. But
Just go to Russia or Antarctica, probably.
uh, I
It's
would love to
crazy
see the
cold.
Northern Lights, but
Yeah, I
at the
haven't
same
seen it.
time, I'm terrified of cold. I really am terrified of cold. When I went to South Korea, I actually wear a mask that covered my face nearly majority of the time because my lips was busted. Uh,
Mm, yeah, it's
yeah,
tough.
yeah. And there's one funny question actually. When I actually reached the airport, because at that time the heater was still on, and my sister actually asked me because she was already there she was already there. She was already settled in the Airbnb, and she asked me this: "How's your face?"
Oh,
Excuse me, how's my face? It's fine. What are you talking about? Go outside and then you tell me in a few minutes. I actually went outside to see what is going on after I pick up my luggage, and it was in the month of December, so it was winter,
yeah.
and boom, the cold wind just blow, and I
Ooh.
feel like there's a giant salmon that flung up and smacked my face. So
Yeah. Oh my
yeah, and I was there for 2 weeks, and I can't stand the cold weather.
God.
Don't get
Yeah.
me wrong. Don't get me wrong. South Korea is a beautiful country, and it is really, really amazing to see that. But yeah, I'm terrified of cold weather. I'm not
Yeah.
gonna. I'm
Yeah.
terrified.
You need to have proper clothing, I guess. I always ask people in Canada, how do they survive living in Canada? And they're just like, yeah, you just need to have proper clothing to keep yourself warm and staying insulated indoors.
Is it also because they are so used to living there? I guess. Like I think
Yeah.
you mentally adjust yourself to the situation that you are born in. So I
Yeah.
guess it's a habit. I guess.
Yeah.
So, do you have among the places that you travel, the 40 countries? Do you have which one the one that is closest to your heart and why?
Yeah, I would definitely, without a second heartbeat, say New Zealand because I've lived there for 6 months, and that's the longest time I've lived in one country. I was there on a working holiday. Um, the people there are okay. So aside from the scenery, everyone loves the scenery. The whole way of life there is pretty chill. Like everyone takes their own time, take time to talk to you, even as strangers, and everyone's really very heartwarming as well. So it's really a lot about connection with each other rather than when I juxtapose this to uh, in when I juxtapose this to life in Singapore, when I had my work interview over there versus work interview over here, they in New Zealand they started off by asking me, "Oh, how's my travels? How am I doing?" Whereas in Singapore, they would go straight into the interview questions like, "Oh, why do you want this job? What can you contribute in this company?" That sort of thing. And
Yeah,
so, yeah, that's the most stark contrast that I found. And over there, growing up in Singapore, where it's concrete buildings everywhere, I just leaned towards more nature preference. And so over there, I felt very much, very comfortable, very relaxed, very happy. Like I would open my window and I'll be facing the mountain, and sometimes it will be snow capped. And so, like, I couldn't think of a better place to be. Yeah.
Okay, okay. All right. Okay. Okay. I actually have a question that one of my contact actually followed your blog, and he's a fan of yours. So yeah, there's actually a question that was left is that because when in this kind of global lifestyle, in your global lifestyle, right, you are able to balance out exploring new culture, but of course now you also need to work because you work online, you work in the digital marketing, right?
Yeah.
How do you balance it out? Because the thing is that for one thing is that growing up in Singapore, there's always going to be that initiative, I guess, in a sense, there's alarm to remind you, well, I need to have some money in my
Yeah.
account.
Yeah.
So how do you balance it out?
Yeah. Yeah. So this is one, I guess, one piece, something that we have to, like, as a digital nomad, I am constantly facing, like, oh, I'm having too much fun. I should be working instead. So this is constantly, you're right, it's constantly on my mind. So it's a lot about really embracing the whole slow traveling lifestyle where you would stay in one place for at least a week or to a month at a time so that you can balance out days for working and then days for relaxing and exploring. And yeah, so not it the conventional style of traveling is like, okay, you have 7 days, each day is packed with activities, but when you're a digital nomad, most of the time you book a place for a month at a time, and then from there, once you get settled in, and that's when you try and catch up on work, and then for a few days maybe, or at least work a few hours each day, and then in the afternoon you go out to do some exploring. Yeah, so in a way, that's how I balance work and explorations.
All right. Okay, now, okay. I think I read this in the article, or I think it was on your website. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
How do you mind sharing with us though? How when you first started doing digital marketing work as a digital nomad, yeah,
Yeah,
and like before you started doing the slow trotting life, is that something that you have already wanted to pursue before even then,
yeah,
and you are thankful eventually that when you want to pursue this life, you are using that skill to earn a living.
yeah. So, yeah, I've always wanted to be able. So, I had this whole vision of being able to be a full time travel blogger in the beginning, and it used to just be a like idealistic dream. But I've always tried to uh, wrap my work or the skills that I learned around it. So in the beginning, it was a lot of just part-time freelancing. Like I would write for different publications, and that can be done very easily and wherever you are. And then I worked in PR and I worked in social media marketing, and so these are jobs that you can also do online, virtually. You don't have to be on site and present with people. And so really, I would advise people who want to do something like who want to pursue digital nomad lifestyle to just surround yourself with um, in community groups such as digital nomad community groups. You can find it on Facebook and everywhere, and just speak to people who have done it and learn from their experiences. They usually have tons of tips and advices for you, and then think about what kind of skills you have that you can capitalize on, that can be used to service online, and then try out freelancing. There are always people looking for work now. With everything being so mobile nowadays, you can always look for work online. And if you don't know anything, you're starting from scratch, you can always try being a VA, which is short for virtual assistant. So it's kind of like an internship where you are just an assistant to somebody who is working online or the company is based online. And you just learn and you practice from there. You pick up skills from there.
Okay. Yeah, I actually heard about it. Some of my past guests have actually started using VA as yeah, with how they are not able to settle to not being able to travel, so they have more time to create like courses or
Yeah,
trainings, and as a result, they need some help when they are conducting their stuff. So
yeah,
VA has been really most helpful to them
yeah.
from their
There are
feedback.
sure. There are also tons of courses, and I have one course that also helps content creators to scale up their content so that they are able to monetize online.
Oh,
So yeah, people are doing all sorts of all these, and there are a lot of resources online nowadays to help you be able to build your own online freedom. Yeah,
okay, okay. This is an interesting information for you guys. So do check out on Isabel's website. I think I saw about what you mentioned earlier. Yeah.
yeah, it's a free SEO course, so it teaches you how to rank your content online. And so it is through ranking online and getting more traffic that I can earn passive income through my blog. So like I could be surfing all day for a whole week or a few weeks at a time, and I would still be having the dollars rolling in through people coming to visit my blog and checking out my travel articles.
All right, all right. That'll be the
Yeah.
dream for everyone. Okay, all right. Okay, so this next question is actually based on an article I'm working on.
Yeah.
It is called the 3G generations. So the 3G stands for four things actually, even though it's called three, but I will explain. So the first one is globalization. Second is followed by against gadgets, against. Wait, what was that? Yeah, I'll edit that out. So the first one is gadgets, globalizations, gadgets, and going to the place itself.
Hmm.
And the last G is actually that created generational differences.
Okay.
Because the why I asked this is because there's actually a unique trend on Netflix, whereby people says that now I experience travel through looking at all of the foreign movies, I guess, because that's the cinematic experience help to
Yeah.
compensate.
Yeah.
However, you have experienced the life whereby being in the place itself is not the same as what the media is portraying,
Yeah.
right? Because well, that one is the more glamorous aspect of it. For your case, you are there physically. So, how do you feel though? Being there truly helps to to reflect who you are. To it does it create any kind of does it create any kind of changes to your personality of sorts, or is there
Yeah.
any kind of stuff that you
Yeah.
wish to mention on that?
Yeah, I have a few examples. So, if let's say we're talking about just attractions, yeah, sure, you can look at documentaries and movies online, but when you're actually down in person, like I was when I was in Cappadocia, Turkey, where you see all the hot air balloons rising at sunrise, it's just such a magical moment that it brought tears to my eyes. It's just so profound. And I mean, attractions like that, like even when I was in Yosemite, because I rock climb, so I see people climbing in Yosemite National Park all the time. But when I was actually down there, you just realize how small you are in comparison to the massive cliff sides and the rocks. And so it makes you feel humble in a way. And also, when I go to third world countries like Laos or Cambodia, and you're just down with the locals and you see how they are living, you can really empathize with them much more and appreciate your life so much more and realize that you shouldn't take your own life for granted. It's yeah, it's stuff like that. And even in super popular Tulum, where I was just at last weekend, where it's been so glamorized on Instagram. When I went down there in person, I would never have expected how packed it is and how compact and how, in a way, it felt very touristy and not as pristine as it looks on Instagram. And so, like, before I went to Tulum, I would die to go to Tulum and live there forever, because the beaches are so wide, the waters are so clear. But when I went down there last weekend, it just felt over touristy and very crowded. So you definitely have a different perspective being on the ground in one place rather than through seeing from Google Earth or from the movies. Definitely very different.
Okay, okay. Okay, though. I actually have one final question for you.
Yeah.
Through all this experience abroad, how do you feel though if in the long run you can help to contribute to create a new kind of culture, not only in Singapore itself, but maybe countries
Mhm.
that are still sticking to a much more conservative mindset?
Mhm.
Earlier, you mentioned it, even though now in Singapore they already detect that there is problem with it, there's still a heavy resistance because there's counterculture, there's cultural differences. So yeah, for yourself though, you have now lived life outside of the Singapore bubble.
Yeah.
How do you feel in the long run that you can help to create something different from it?
Yeah, I would most definitely hope that people will be more open to travel, because you learn so much more and you're so much more open minded, and you're really not like all the stereotypes of different cultures, different countries acting a certain way is broken. Like, for example, I love the US because of the friends that I meet who are super kind and hospitable with me. Whereas maybe in the news, all you hear about the US are negative
Yeah,
sentiments. And so
yeah.
you realize that not everyone is like that, and every individual is different in every country. And so I hope that, like, people are able to be comparing that to the Singapore culture. I'm hoping that through the travels, people can be friendlier to each other, gentler to each other, not be so uptight about things, and really embrace the unpredictability of life, and that it's okay to mess up and screw up. Life goes on, and sometimes it's just meant to be, and you find a light at the end of the tunnel, which is even better than what you imagined.
All right,
And, like, most of all, not to take things for granted.
all right.
Yeah.
Okay, that's all the questions that I have. Isabel, anything you may want to add on to that?
Yeah, no, I think we covered quite a bit of my story and what travel is. So yeah, it's a good session.
All right. Okay. All right. So I actually just need to thank Mr. Eugene Savinon. He is a good friend of mine. He has been a follower of the show. And for those of you who actually do tune in, I keep seeing the numbers, but apologies, guys. Yeah, I may not be able to give you the credit. It's since I can't see your names. So yeah, for those of you who will be rewatching this, the replay will be on Instagram TV on my profile, which is Global Cktizens, and it will also be on my YouTube. And of course, this video itself will still be in my playlist. So other than that, if any of you are interested to start your own podcast or you guys want to try something new, you can earn yourself a $10 credit for StreamYard, which is the software that I'm using now, or you earn yourself a Canva credit in order for you to create digital graphics of your own, which I use to create the title cards. So other than that, I definitely need to give the last thanks to Isabel herself for making the time to come here today. So yeah, thank you so much, Isabel. I hope you enjoy yourself today.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me on here.
All right. And with that, we end episode 77 of Global Citizens called Bell Around the World. So with that, thank you everyone. Have a good day or have a good night. Please take care of yourself. Bye.
Bye.